is that all these tanks were handmade. Even though they were made in jigs, there was probably a lot of tolerances, so the part we're trying to fit doesn't necessarily want to fit in the thing we're trying to fit it into. You know, there's angles inside.
Yeah.
They're on there, because they don't fit into each other, look. As far as I know, no one has actually ever tried to repair the front of a Comet with using the parts cut out of a donor vehicle. I think this is the first time it's been done. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think it's the way to go. It's recycling. See, we haven't just restored this, we've used authentic parts. You could have made the front out of new metal plate, but when it was in there, it wouldn't look as good. Because this has got all the, you know, the marks on it and the aging on it to match the rest of it.
Are you going to catch that chain yet?
Dave takes his restoration work seriously, because in the world of tank collecting, it's all about the details.
Just spot on where it is.
Each year at the Bovington Tank Museum, southwest of London, tank collectors gather to show their stuff.
Yeah, we thought we'd come down and show our faces.
Yeah.
And just remind a few people that we still exist.
We are in a hidey way on that.
In our hidey hole on the Isle of Wight.
This year features the only running Tiger tank in the world.
I'm going to wet my pants when I see the Tiger. I can't wait. Don't forget, we won the war. They all forget it around here.
We're going to bring the next event a bit forward.
The Germans didn't win.
Besides getting these machines to run, incredible attention is paid to the details that make each vehicle authentic. It takes time, dedication, and lots of money. For those on a budget, there are smaller options. But for Dave and his crew, the answer was to build their own museum.
Because we had no money, the whole place was built on a very, very limited budget. Built the whole thing. Me, Bob, and David when he came from school. Built the whole lot. To get where we are now, it's taken us 12 years. And no money.
And this year, they're planning to launch their first annual tank show.
We're going to have a show that's just on their own site, and we're going to have probably this year be 10 running tanks out on the rough ground behind me. And there's going to be partying at night time, bars, food, good atmosphere.
But before the party, that front armor has to go in. It's time for the MIG welder.
MIG welding, that's metal inert gas. The metal is the feed wire that comes out in the middle. That can be anything. That could be aluminium, stainless steel, mild steel, whatever you want to put through it. The armor plate is homogenized rolled armor. If you weld this plate with mild steel wire, the welds will crack as soon as they cool down. So we have to weld this with stainless steel, just like it was originally welded. This is expensive stuff. It's £120 sterling a roll compared to the mild steel wire is £13 sterling a roll. They don't like welding through rust and they don't like welding through paint. So it's going to quickly get in there and just clean around the primer that we've already put on just to get a good weld around there. Really, we're not really into tank restoration. What we're really into is dressing up in all this protective equipment. That's what we like doing. It's a fetish.
In order to fit the front armor, Dave has to make adjustment brackets. The 2-inch rolled steel plate weighs almost 3 tons.
Oh, that's tight.
It's going to take a few tries before it goes in.
It's already gone out of hand.
No,
We only
there's plenty of
started,
people
yeah.
that have got a lot more money than we have that can obviously afford to chuck huge amounts of money at this. So you're never actually going to compete with them. But they don't do it themselves, do they? If I actually had the money to pay someone else to do this, I wouldn't bother doing it. It's just, what's the point?
It's not a hobby, then, is it?
It's no fun at all. I can stand back and I can look at this when it's done and think, yeah, I did that.
A hobby's something you do yourself, and then you enjoy it yourself afterwards. That's a hobby.
Yeah, this isn't a hobby, Dave, but we're getting paid to do this.
Yeah, it's partly a hobby, though.
It's a way of life. Right.
While Dave and Dave work on the front end, Bob concentrates on the details.
Bob is a really good guy, but when he disappears down his shed, no one really knows what goes on down there.
Wiring tanks is what he does for fun.
And the Comet cruise tank, that's a 12-volt DC system, basically similar automotively to most heavy vehicles of the period.
Lately, Bob has been restoring the instrument panels.
Just satisfying to take a smashed-up instrument panel and rebuild it back to sort of working order.
The work is painstaking and requires patience.
My favourite thing about working on tanks is the connection to the military history and the fellas who manned them. It gives you a real tactile connection to the things you read about. And you get a much better idea of what the technical backup that would be required to keep an armoured formation in the field, etc. And it gives you a big respect for the men who manned them.
March 1945. Allied forces crossed the Rhine, and the invasion of Germany had begun.
The situation changes dramatically once the Rhine has been crossed. All join in this same mad race to get into Germany as fast as possible, probably to head off the Russians coming the other way and to head for our respective areas.
For the invasion to succeed, the Allies had to move fast. It was a new type of war, with emphasis on speed and endurance.
What this meant for the Comet as almost a sort of first attempt at battle was long road drives, probably at high speed, very fast and furious actions. And going up against Tigers for the first time, I think with the success that the regiments enjoyed there, you get a tremendous boost.
The Comet, with its fast, reliable engine and hard-hitting gun, proved to be the right tank at the right time. But tank commanders would soon learn that the Germans were not going to give up without a fight. Young men armed with Panzerfausts were waiting to ambush any tank that came along. The single high-explosive round could blast through the tank's armor at short range. By themselves, tanks were extremely vulnerable. Luckily, the Comet could carry backup.
Towards the end of the breakout, as the British troops were going through Holland and Belgium and into Germany, the advance was so fast that the troops grabbed lifts with whatever they could going by, and you see a lot of pictures of the Comets with like several, 10, 12 troops all hanging off the back of them just trying to get a lift to save walking. I think that was probably one of its most valuable roles.
By carrying troops, Comet commanders were able to prevent ambush.
If you've got infantry actually on your vehicle and you run into the sort of situation we talked about where you've got lighter handheld anti-tank weapons, if these guys can dismount and start moving forward, you pity the chap with the Panzerfaust because he's then got problems. So it was mutually very beneficial.
What soldiers and tankers improvised in combat has since become a standard tactic of modern warfare. Today, the integration of infantry and tank is known as Combined Arms Operations. Fort Bliss, Texas. The 4th Brigade of the 1st Armored Cavalry specializes in combined arms operations. Here, the M1 Abrams trains